She sacrificed everything to save her alpha, then heard him admit she was never meant to survive. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic and emotional stories like this one. Your support truly means the world to us. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and what time it is where you are right now. We love seeing how far these stories travel and knowing who is joining us today. Now, let's begin today's story. If I save him tonight, what happens to me? Clara Whitmore asked, but no one in the moon chamber answered. Beyond the tall windows of Mooncrest Palace, the first moon hung silver above the mountains, while King Alpha Nathaniel Ashford stood unsteadily beside the ancient moon seal. For 3 nights, something hidden inside the royal bloodline had been draining the strength from him. Healers had tried every remedy recorded in the palace archives. Nothing worked. Yet whenever Clara entered the room, the strange darkness surrounding Nathaniel's spirit became still. The council called it coincidence. Clara knew better. She had felt the invisible pull between them from the first night his strength began fading, like a quiet thread connecting her heartbeat to his. She was only an omega in the eyes of Mooncrest's noble families. The woman, they whispered, was too ordinary to stand beside a King Alpha. Nathaniel had never treated her that way. That was why, when the royal healer warned that the moon seal might accept energy from someone spiritually connected to him, Clara stepped forward before anyone could stop her. Clara, no, Nathaniel said. His voice was weak, but his eyes remained fixed on hers. We do not know what it will take. We know what happens if nobody tries. She placed her palm against the cold silver stone. At first, nothing changed. Then warmth moved through her hand, gentle but powerful, as though the moon seal had recognized something inside her. Silver light spread across the chamber. Nathaniel inhaled sharply as color slowly returned to his face and steadiness returned to his posture. Clara smiled because he was standing again. Then her knees nearly failed beneath her. The healer caught her arm before she fell. Enough, Nathaniel ordered. Clara pulled her hand away. The light vanished, but Nathaniel remained strong. Relief filled the chamber. Council members began speaking at once, calling it a miracle, praising the moon, celebrating their king's recovery. Clara heard them as if they were standing 100 feet away. Her body felt strangely weightless. A pale crescent had appeared beneath the skin of her wrist. Nathaniel moved toward her. Clara. She managed a tired smile. You are all right. Something unreadable crossed his face. You need to rest. Hours later, Clara woke in her chambers with the silver mark still glowing faintly. Unable to sleep, she walked toward the royal healer's study, hoping for an explanation. Nathaniel's voice stopped her before she reached the doorway. Tell me the truth. The healer answered quietly. The transfer has begun exactly as the prophecy described. Clara froze. Nathaniel spoke again. And Clara? A long silence followed. Her strength will continue feeding yours until the first moon completes its cycle. Clara pressed one hand against the wall. Then Nathaniel asked the question that turned her relief into cold disbelief. There is still no record of a Luna surviving it. None. Nathaniel's next words came barely above a whisper. So it was true. She was never meant to survive the transfer. Clara stared at the glowing crescent on her wrist. The man she had sacrificed everything to save had known there was a prophecy. And somewhere inside Mooncrest Palace, someone had decided her life was an acceptable price for keeping a king alive. Clara did not enter the healer's study. She stood outside the half-open door until the silence inside became unbearable, then walked away before Nathaniel could discover her. Every step back toward her chambers felt slower than the last. She had expected weakness after touching the moon seal. She had even accepted the possibility that helping him might cost her something. What she had never accepted was becoming part of a prophecy everyone understood except her. By sunrise, Nathaniel found her standing beside the window overlooking Mooncrest's snow-covered courtyard. You should be resting, he said. Clara did not turn around. How long did you know? The room became still. Nathaniel stopped several feet behind her. Clara, how long? He released a slow breath. I knew there was an old prophecy connected to the first moon. She finally faced him. That was not my question. The silver crescent beneath her wrist glowed faintly. When did you know the person who saved you might not survive? Nathaniel's expression changed. Before last night, I did not know the prophecy referred to you. But you knew someone might pay that price. He looked away for 1 second, and that was enough. Clara felt something inside her become painfully clear. You should have told me. I tried to stop you from touching the seal. You told me we did not know what it would take. Her voice remained quiet. That was not the whole truth. Nathaniel stepped closer, then stopped when Clara moved back. The records were incomplete. The council believed the prophecy might be symbolic. And you let me decide without knowing what you knew. Nathaniel had no defense for that. Clara looked at the man she had trusted enough to risk everything for, and for the first time she understood that love could exist beside failure. Loving her had not automatically made Nathaniel wise. Loving him did not require Clara to excuse what he had done. I need the original prophecy, she said. The royal archive is restricted. Then remove the restriction. Clara, your strength is still fading. Exactly. Her answer stopped him. If Mooncrest believes I am supposed to disappear for its king, I would like to know who decided that. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. I will find out. No, Clara pulled a winter cloak around her shoulders. We will find out separately. She left him standing in the room. Instead of entering the royal archive, Clara went beneath the oldest wing of the palace, where records rejected by the crown had been stored for generations. An elderly librarian named Margaret Hale looked up when Clara entered. Her eyes immediately dropped to the silver crescent on Clara's wrist. The color left her face. Where did you get that mark? The moon seal. Margaret slowly closed the book in front of her. And the king. Alive. Margaret stared at Clara with an expression that was not relief. It was recognition. She rose and unlocked a cabinet hidden behind a row of damaged histories. Inside rested a narrow silver book covered in dust. The crown calls women like you sacrifices, Margaret whispered. That was never your true purpose. Clara's heartbeat quickened. Women like me? Margaret placed the ancient book before her. Across its cover was the same crescent glowing beneath Clara's skin. Beneath it were 4 faded words. Sacrificed Alpha King's Luna. Clara looked up. Margaret's voice dropped even lower. If the old records are right, you are not dying because you saved him. You are dying because someone removed the second half of the covenant. Clara stared at the silver book as if it had spoken her name. Removed by whom? Margaret Hale glanced toward the archive door before lowering herself into the chair opposite Clara. That is the question every official history avoids. She opened the fragile volume carefully. Most pages contained faded records of women who had lived beside Alpha Kings centuries earlier. Each entry followed the same pattern. A royal illness during the first moon, a Luna who offered her strength, a king who recovered, and a final sentence praising the woman for completing her sacred duty. Clara traced one name with her fingertip. What happened to them afterward? According to the crown, they were honored by the moon. Clara looked up. That sounds like a beautiful way of saying nobody wrote down what happened. Margaret gave a sad nod. Clara turned another page. Another Luna. Another king saved. Another woman disappearing from the record. She felt the crescent on her wrist pulse, and a wave of exhaustion forced her to steady herself against the table. Margaret reached toward her, but Clara lifted one hand. I am all right. No, Margaret said gently. You are. Still transferring strength to Nathaniel. Clara looked toward the ceiling as though she could see through several floors of stone to the king above them. Then I need answers faster. Near the center of the book, several pages had been deliberately removed. Their edges were too clean to be accidental. Margaret placed another document beside them, an older translation copied before those pages vanished. One sentence remained legible. The Luna gives freely beneath the first moon, and the king shall then. The rest had been scratched away. Clara felt anger replace fear. There was another step. I believe so. And someone erased it. Margaret nodded. Generations ago. Clara closed her eyes. She had spent years hearing that Omegas were born to serve stronger wolves. Now even sacred history seemed shaped by the same convenient belief. But if someone had needed to erase part of the ritual, then sacrifice had never been inevitable. It had been useful. Clara stood despite the weakness in her legs. Where were the original ceremonies performed? Margaret hesitated. Not in the palace. She pulled an old map from beneath the book and pointed toward the northern forest, nearly 12 miles beyond Mooncrest. The first moon sanctuary. It was sealed after the last sacrificed Luna disappeared. Clara studied the fated route. Then that is where I am going. You should not travel alone in your condition. I am not waiting here while other people decide how much time I have. Margaret looked at her for a long moment, then handed her a small silver key. Your mother once came here asking about the same symbol. Clara froze. My mother? She made me promise never to tell you unless the crescent appeared. Margaret opened a hidden drawer and removed a folded letter bearing Clara's name. Her hands trembled as she accepted it. The handwriting belonged to the mother Clara had lost years earlier. Clara unfolded the page. Only one line had been written inside. If the moon ever calls you the sacrificed Luna, remember this. Sacred love was never meant to end with only one heart still beating. Clara read the sentence twice. Then the crescent on her wrist flared silver, and somewhere far beneath Mooncrest, an ancient bell rang once. Above the archive, Nathaniel heard it too. He turned toward the northern windows just as every royal record of the first moon opened by itself to the same missing page. Clara reached the first moon sanctuary before dusk, following a narrow road through 12 miles of snow-covered forest until the trees opened around a forgotten circle of silver gray stone. The sanctuary looked abandoned, but the moment she stepped beneath its ancient arch, the crescent on her wrist warmed. One by one, symbols carved into 7 pillars began glowing. Clara held her mother's letter against her chest and moved toward the altar at the center. Unlike the moon seal inside the palace, this stone had 2 handprints carved into its surface. One was surrounded by a crescent. The other bore the shape of a crown. Clara placed the silver key Margaret had given her into a narrow opening beneath them. A hidden compartment opened. Inside rested a thin sheet of silver engraved with words older than any record she had seen. Clara read slowly. The Luna gives freely so the king may rise. Then the king, restored by her gift, must choose whether the covenant ends with power or begins again with mercy. Her breath caught. There was more. If he keeps what was given, the Luna shall fade as the first moon fades. If he freely returns what preserves her life, neither shall possess the whole gift, and both shall carry the covenant. Clara lowered herself onto the stone bench beside the altar. For generations, Mooncrest had remembered only the first choice. The Luna sacrificed. The king survived. History praised her loyalty and never questioned why sacred love demanded that only one person remain. Clara looked at her glowing wrist. It was never supposed to be only my sacrifice, she whispered. Another inscription appeared beneath the first. No return may be commanded. No forgiveness may be required. The king must choose without promise of reward. Clara understood then why the missing passage mattered. Nathaniel could save her, but the covenant would recognize his choice only if he surrendered part of the royal life force willingly. She could not demand it. The council could not order it, and he could not offer it merely to guarantee that she remained his Luna. Footsteps sounded beyond the sanctuary arch. Clara turned, expecting Nathaniel. Instead, Margaret appeared, carrying another recovered record. The royal archives reacted when you opened this place, she said. Nathaniel is searching them now. Clara accepted the document. It listed 6 sacrificed Lunas across 4 centuries. Beside every name was the same final notation: transfer completed. Royal strength preserved. Clara searched the page. Where are the records of the king returning the gift? Margaret's silence answered first. There are none. Clara stared at her. Not once. Not that survived in Mooncrest history. A colder realization settled over Clara. Perhaps generations of kings had never known they had a second choice. Or perhaps someone had known and decided royal power mattered more. Back at Mooncrest Palace, Nathaniel stood inside the restricted archive surrounded by records that had opened to their missing pages. Behind one royal genealogy, he discovered a sealed document bearing the crest of his own bloodline. He broke the centuries-old wax and read the decree inside. By order of the Crown Council, all reference to the king's return shall be removed, so no future ruler is persuaded to diminish royal strength for the sake of one Luna. Nathaniel read it again, his face becoming still. The prophecy had never demanded Clara's death. His throne had simply inherited a system designed to make her death seem sacred. At the bottom of the decree, another sentence had been added by an unknown hand. One day, a king will learn the truth before the first moon ends. What he chooses then will reveal whether he deserves the Luna who saved him. Nathaniel did not sleep that night. He remained inside the restricted archive while the palace settled into silence, reading the names of every sacrificed Luna the crown had celebrated and then forgotten. 6 women. 6 recovered kings. 6 lives reduced to ceremonial sentences about honor and duty. He found no evidence that any of those women had been told there was another choice. By morning, the truth felt heavier than the crown waiting upstairs. Nathaniel carried the recovered decree into the council chamber and placed it before the royal elders. Who knew about this? No one answered. Lord Everett, the oldest council member, finally lowered his eyes. The second passage was considered dangerous. Nathaniel stared at him. Dangerous to whom? To the stability of the crown. Returning royal life force could diminish an alpha king permanently. Nathaniel's expression hardened. So the crown preserved its strength by allowing a Luna to believe her death was sacred. Everett shifted uneasily. Those decisions were made centuries ago and repeated every generation that chose not to question them. Nathaniel looked toward the windows. Somewhere beyond 12 miles of winter forest, Clara was weakening because his life had become stronger. The knowledge made every breath feel borrowed. Restore every missing record, he ordered. Your Majesty, there may be consequences. There already are. He left before anyone could argue. At the First Moon Sanctuary, Clara sat beside the ancient altar while Margaret studied the inscriptions. The silver crescent on Clara's wrist had grown brighter, but her hands felt colder. How much time? Clara asked. Margaret looked toward the pale moon still visible above the trees. Until the first moon completes its cycle. Perhaps 2 days. Clara absorbed the answer without looking away. Fear was there, but beneath it lived something stronger. She would not spend those 2 days waiting to learn whether someone else considered her worth saving. Then we document everything, she said. Every inscription, every missing name, every choice they erased. Margaret watched her with quiet admiration. Even now, you are thinking about the women who came before you. Clara touched her mother's letter. Someone should. By afternoon, Nathaniel arrived alone. He stopped beneath the sanctuary arch when he saw Clara. Relief crossed his face, followed immediately by guilt. I found the decree. So did I, in another form. Clara stood carefully. Nathaniel noticed the effort it required, but did not rush toward her. Clara, I know how to return what you gave me. She met his eyes. Knowing is not the same as understanding. Then help me understand. Her voice remained calm. I saved you because I loved you. I would make that choice again if I had the whole truth. But I will not die simply to prove that love was real. Nathaniel's eyes lowered. You should never have been asked to. I was not asked. That is the point. Silence filled the sanctuary. Clara stepped closer to the altar. If love requires one of us to disappear so the other can remain powerful, then it is not sacred. Nathaniel looked at the crown-shaped handprint carved into the stone. Then I choose you over the power. Clara studied him for several seconds. Once, those words would have been enough. Now she understood that promises made in fear could sound exactly like wisdom. Do not prove it to me here, she said. Prove it when saving me cost you something in front of the people who taught you that my life was worth less than your strength. Nathaniel slowly nodded. Then tomorrow Mooncrest will hear everything. Clara looked toward the 7 glowing pillars. And if they tell you a king cannot survive without that power? Nathaniel met her gaze. Then they will finally learn that a crown worth keeping cannot depend on someone else being sacrificed to preserve it. The sanctuary answered with a single silver pulse, and beneath the altar, a 7th inscription began to awaken. By noon the next day, every seat in Mooncrest's great hall was filled. Pack leaders, healers, guards, servants, and families from the surrounding settlements stood beneath the silver dome while Nathaniel faced them without ceremony. Clara watched from beside Margaret near the front of the hall. She had insisted on standing rather than being presented as someone fragile, though the crescent on her wrist now shone brightly enough to be seen from several feet away. Nathaniel placed the recovered royal decree on the council table. For generations, Mooncrest taught that a Luna chosen by the first moon might be required to surrender her strength so an Alpha King could survive, he said. Murmurs moved through the hall. That teaching was incomplete. Lord Everett rose. Immediately, Your Majesty, ancient laws should not be judged by modern understanding. Nathaniel turned toward him. A lie does not become sacred because it survives for centuries. The hall fell silent. Nathaniel read the hidden passage aloud, including the choice the crown had erased. When he finished, several council members looked stunned. Others already seemed to understand exactly what the revelation threatened. Everett stepped forward. Returning royal life force could weaken the throne permanently. Mooncrest depends upon a powerful Alpha King. Mooncrest depends upon justice more than it depends upon my strength, Nathaniel replied. Clara felt the words settle through the room, but she did not mistake them for redemption. Words were only the beginning. Nathaniel seemed to understand that too. He lifted a new decree. From this day forward, no Luna, Omega, or member of this pack may be offered to any sacred rite without full knowledge and free consent. Every surviving record of the sacrificed Lunas will be restored. Their names will return to our history. Everett stared at him. And Clara? Nathaniel looked toward her, but he did not answer for her. Clara decides what happens to Clara. For the first time since the transfer began, something inside her loosened. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition. Nathaniel signed the decree and pressed the royal seal into the wax. The instant he did, the crescent on Clara's wrist flashed silver. A matching light appeared beneath Nathaniel's palm. Gasps spread through the hall. Margaret stepped closer to Clara. The Covenant heard him. Nathaniel looked at the mark, then at Clara. What does that mean? Clara remembered the seventh inscription beginning to awaken beneath the sanctuary altar. It means there is still something we have not read. They returned to the first moon sanctuary before sunset. This time, Nathaniel walked beside Clara rather than ahead of her. When they entered, the seventh pillar was fully illuminated. Words appeared across its base as Clara approached. She read them aloud. The first gift reveals the Luna. The second reveals the king. Nathaniel frowned. The second gift? Another line. Emerged. The king must return freely what he was given before the final moonrise. No promise of bond, crown, forgiveness, or love may purchase his choice. Nathaniel looked at Clara. Then there is nothing to negotiate. Clara's eyes searched his. You could lose part of your strength forever. I know. The council may question your ability to rule. Then they can question it. And returning the gift does not mean I will stay with you. Nathaniel was silent for a moment. When he answered, there was no desperation in his voice. I know that too. Clara felt tears gather, but she held his gaze. This was the answer the old covenant had demanded for centuries, not whether a Luna loved enough to sacrifice herself, but whether a king could love without demanding possession in return. Nathaniel placed his hand above the crown-shaped mark on the altar, but waited. Not until the final moonrise, Clara said. He withdrew his hand immediately. Then the seventh pillar opened with a quiet movement of ancient stone. Hidden inside was a list of names. 6 sacrificed Lunas. Beneath them waited an empty seventh line. Clara touched the blank space, and words slowly appeared beneath her fingers. The seventh Luna will not repeat their fate. She will reveal what the crown feared most. Clara turned toward Nathaniel as the sanctuary filled with silver light. The forgotten ritual had never been designed to preserve the strongest king. It had been designed to discover whether he was worthy of being one. The final moonrise was less than 12 hours away when Nathaniel returned to Mooncrest Palace, and this time he did not return as a king protecting his throne. He returned as a man preparing to risk it. Clara remained at the sanctuary with Margaret, documenting every inscription before time or politics could hide the truth again. Nathaniel, meanwhile, summoned the council for a second emergency session. Lord Everett was already waiting when he entered. You have changed the law, Everett said. You have restored the records. There is no reason to surrender royal strength as well. Nathaniel removed his crown and placed it on the council table. Clara is the reason. Everett shook his head. One life cannot outweigh the security of thousands. Nathaniel studied him. That argument is exactly how this began. He opened the recovered ledger containing the 6 forgotten names. For centuries, people called these women noble because that made it easier not to call what happened unjust. Several council members lowered their eyes. Everett remained rigid. If the ritual weakens you, rival packs may see opportunity. Then Mooncrest will show them that our strength does not depend on sacrificing our own. Nathaniel turned toward the gathered leaders. I will complete the return tonight. Whether Clara forgives me, whether she remains my Luna, whether I remain the strongest alpha in this territory, none of those things changes what is right. No one answered. Nathaniel pushed the crown toward the center of the table. If my right to rule depends upon keeping strength that belongs partly to Clara, then I have no right to wear this. He walked away without taking the crown. News traveled through Mooncrest before sunset. By the time Nathaniel reached the sanctuary again, people had gathered beyond the ancient stone circle, but no one entered. Clara stood beneath the 7 illuminated pillars, wrapped in a pale winter cloak. She looked tired, yet there was something almost luminous about her now. Nathaniel approached and stopped several feet away. The council knows my decision. Clara glanced at his empty head. Where is your crown? Where it belongs until this is finished. A faint smile touched her face, but sadness remained in her eyes. You understand this will not erase what happened. Yes. You should have trusted me with the truth. Yes. And saving me does not purchase my forgiveness. Nathaniel held her gaze. I know. Clara searched his expression as though looking for the king who once believed protection meant deciding what another person needed to know. She could not find him. Then why are you doing it? Nathaniel looked toward the altar. Because your life has value whether you choose me afterward or not. The crescent on Clara's wrist brightened. The sanctuary responded immediately. Silver light traveled from pillar to pillar, until the entire circle glowed beneath the rising moon. Margaret stepped back toward the entrance. It recognizes the choice, she whispered. Clara approached the altar. Nathaniel stood opposite her. The 2 carved handprints waited between them. For one suspended moment, neither moved. Then a new inscription appeared across the stone. What was freely given may be freely returned. What is returned without demand shall reveal the true covenant. Nathaniel placed his hand over the crown-shaped mark. Clara's breath caught as silver light gathered beneath his palm. Nathaniel. He looked at her. There was no fear in his face now. Whatever happens after tonight, live. The sanctuary filled with light. Nathaniel's royal mark began to fade as Clara's crescent grew brighter, and for the first time in Mooncrest history, an Alpha King willingly returned the power his Luna had sacrificed to save him. Silver light moved through the sanctuary like a slow tide, flowing from Nathaniel's hand into the ancient altar and rising again around Clara. She felt warmth return first to her fingertips, then her arms, then the place beneath her ribs where exhaustion had lived for days. The crescent on her wrist no longer burned. It glowed steadily, almost peacefully. Across the altar, Nathaniel remained standing, but Clara saw his shoulders tense as the royal mark beneath his palm grew dimmer. Nathaniel, that is enough. He did not move. The covenant decides when it is enough. You do not know what it will take from you. His eyes met hers. Neither did you when you saved me. The words held no accusation, only understanding. Clara remembered the moon chamber, the cold seal beneath her hand, and the certainty that his life mattered even when she had not known the price. Now he was making the same choice with something she had never been given, complete knowledge. The final silver thread left Nathaniel's mark. For one frightening second, every pillar went dark. Clara heard Margaret whisper his name from beyond the circle. Then the altar answered. Light erupted beneath both handprints, not violently, but with extraordinary brilliance. Nathaniel pulled his hand back. His royal mark had not disappeared. It had changed. The sharp crown-shaped symbol was now surrounded by a silver crescent identical to Clara's. Clara looked at her own wrist. Her crescent had changed too, gaining a small crown at its center. That is not in the records, Margaret said. Nathaniel steadied himself against the altar. Clara immediately moved toward him, but he lifted his head and gave her a reassuring nod. I am all right. She studied him carefully. His presence felt different, quieter somehow, but not weaker. Your power. Nathaniel closed his eyes for a moment. Still there. The 7 pillars suddenly illuminated again. Words appeared across the altar in a language Clara had never studied, yet somehow she understood them. What is freely returned becomes greater than what was taken. Margaret stared at the inscription. The crown misunderstood everything. Clara slowly shook her head. No. Someone understood it and hid it. Another line emerged. Power kept by one diminishes. Power carried by two becomes covenant. Nathaniel looked at Clara, but he made no move toward her. Even now, he waited for her choice. Clara understood what the ancient ritual had been measuring. The first sacrifice had never been the final test. The Luna's willingness revealed her heart, but the king's response revealed his character. A ruler who accepted everything and returned nothing could preserve his strength, yet he would never awaken the true covenant. Clara's knees suddenly weakened, and Nathaniel instinctively stepped forward before stopping himself. She noticed. "You can help me," she said softly. Only then did he offer his hand. Clara took it. Warmth passed between them, balanced now, neither draining the other. Outside the sanctuary, the people of Mooncrest watched silver light rise above the trees and spread across the winter sky. Margaret approached the seventh pillar. The empty line beneath the 6 forgotten Luna names had begun filling itself. Clara expected to see her own name. Instead, 3 words appeared. The first returned. Beneath them, another inscription slowly emerged. 6 were recorded as lost. 6 were never found. Clara's breath caught. "Never found." Margaret whispered. Nathaniel looked toward the sanctuary floor as a deep silver line appeared between the stones. The altar shifted aside, revealing ancient steps descending beneath the earth. Cold silver light rose from below. Clara stared into the hidden passage. Mooncrest had spent centuries believing 6 sacrificed Lunas had died. The Covenant was telling them something very different. Nathaniel looked at Clara. "We do not have to go down there tonight." Clara tightened her hand around his, not because she needed permission, but because this time they were choosing together. "No," she said quietly. "But tomorrow, we find out where they went." By sunrise, Clara could walk without weakness for the first time since the transfer began. She and Nathaniel returned to Mooncrest together, but neither entered the palace as they had before. The people waiting in the courtyard did not bow only to their king. Many turned first toward Clara, the Omega whose life had exposed a truth their history had hidden for centuries. Nathaniel stopped before the palace steps and looked at her. "The crown is still in the council chamber." Clara understood what he was really saying. "Do you want it back?" "Only if I can wear it without asking someone else to become smaller, so I can remain powerful." Inside the great hall, the council waited beside the abandoned crown. Lord Everett looked exhausted rather than defiant. Nathaniel placed the restored covenant records beside it. "These become public today. Nothing is removed. Nothing is rewritten." Everett glanced toward Clara. "And what shall history call her?" Nathaniel did not answer. He looked at Clara instead. She stepped forward. "Clara Whitmore." A quiet murmur passed through the hall. Not a sacrifice. Not a symbol created to make someone else's choices easier to accept. "Write my name, and write that I survived because the covenant was finally completed." Margaret placed copies of the 6 forgotten Luna records on the table. Their names would be restored beside the kings they had saved. Nathaniel then signed a second decree establishing that no sacred bond in Mooncrest could be recognized without informed and voluntary consent from everyone involved. Only after the seal dried did Clara lift the crown from the table. Nathaniel watched her silently. She held it for a moment, remembering the object that had once represented everything standing between them. Then she offered it back. "A crown does not make you worthy." Nathaniel accepted it, but did not put it on. "I know." Clara's expression softened. "That is why you may be ready to wear it now." Later, beneath the open winter sky, Nathaniel stood before Mooncrest and accepted the crown again. His power felt different after the covenant, less overwhelming but more balanced. Clara stood beside him because she chose to, not because prophecy placed her there. When the gathering ended, they returned alone to the sanctuary. The hidden staircase still waited beneath the altar. Before descending, Nathaniel turned to her. "There is something I need to say before whatever comes next." Clara waited. "I loved you before I understood how badly I had failed you. I do not expect love to erase that." "It will not," Clara said. Nathaniel nodded. "Then I will spend whatever time you give me becoming someone you can trust without asking you to forget." Clara looked at the matching symbol on his hand, then at her own. "That is a better beginning than a promise." She reached for him, and this time the warmth between them remained perfectly balanced. Together they descended the ancient stairs. At the bottom stood a circular chamber containing 6 silver doors, each engraved with the name of a sacrificed Luna. None looked like a tomb. Clara approached the nearest door. Beneath the woman's name were words hidden from Mooncrest for generations. She was not taken by the moon. She crossed beyond the covenant. Nathaniel stared at the other 5 doors. Clara understood at once. The women history called dead might never have died there at all. At the center of the chamber stood a 7th door bearing Clara's crescent and Nathaniel's crown. It opened without being touched. Beyond it stretched a silver-lit path beneath an impossible night sky, and somewhere far away, 6 lights awakened one after another. Clara felt Nathaniel's hand beside hers, but neither stepped forward. Yet, Mooncrest had finally learned that true strength was not measured by what someone was willing to take. It was measured by what they were willing to return. And Clara, the first sacrificed Alpha King's Luna to complete the Forgotten Covenant and come back, had not merely survived. She had opened the door to a history that was still alive.